For us, we can supply the information, but how the Parliament is able to then use that in order to push for better protection for its constituency will be very key in changing this focus more on military security rather than on human security. I would like to also thank the honorable member that shared the option of the Hall of Shame. This has been used in several cases. Some institutions use scorecards. Amnesty, as a matter of principle, we try to present the facts as it is, but I do know that several civil society organizations, particularly in the women's movement, use scorecards and have halls of shame periodically where they do red, they use the traffic light method of red, yellow, green to show how states are progressing on certain aspects of compliance with the Maputo Protocol and relevant international human rights treaties. In terms of our methodology, this is one area that we faced a lot of criticism as Amnesty International. It is a style that has evolved over the years, but the principle still remains the same, that we present facts in a manner as independent as possible, without any political, religious, or other interest affiliation, recognizing that our key yardstick is international law and how the situation is playing out in relation to international law principles. One way that I think that we could move forward in assessing the effectiveness of the security infrastructure in our state is to look at the investment that has gone on in military security and see whether we're getting value for money. If the money we've been spending on military expenditure in the last 10 years has translated to an improvement in the lives of the people. If not, perhaps we should be looking at something else in order to achieve different results. I would like to also thank the honorable member that mentioned the issue about deaths and getting the number of youth. This is an area that I'll take back as feedback to see how we can document that. For now, we disaggregate based on men and women. Part of the challenge we've had is that in cases where some of these atrocious deaths have occurred, if they are Muslims, they are buried almost immediately. And so even getting information in terms of age might be challenging, but oftentimes people are able to tell you how many men and women have been affected, and we're also able to get that from relevant people involved in the burials and also the authorized morgues in getting this information. But it's a feedback we'll take back because we also believe that the bulk of the people who are suffering many of these atrocities are young people, particularly young men. The sad reality when we look at what is going on in the West Africa region, particularly in light of the coup d'etat, is that the only arm of government that is often impacted in these coups are the parliament. The executive is replaced, they replace civilians with military, the judiciary's powers are greatly limited, but the parliament becomes non-existent. And so it becomes very crucial that we have a system that prevents a situation whereby even the people themselves, as we have seen in some of our countries, feel that military rule is offering them some succor because the parliament is here to ensure that people's rights are respected and that no one's rights are undermined, particularly all the other arms of government. And that it's crucial that international human rights law, international humanitarian law, and standards are secured. I think I would, before I will end with the Russia comment, but before then, one of the things we discovered in our research, looking at all the various countries in the region, is that many of us inherited a police force and security infrastructure that is hostile to the population by design, because this was a creation of colonial bodies whose interest was to retain power and to repress. We seem not to have been able to change that system in the spirit of Ubuntu, which we all recognize within the African continent. And it seems that it was just a replacement of one power over the other. Many people in communities want they want to feel safe with their police. They want to feel safe with their security agents. We want to be proud of our armed forces. And we don't want to be afraid when they come because we know they've come to protect us. So it's more also about how can we dismantle these structures which was built on a faulty foundation, that the police was meant to keep the ruling power in power at all costs and begin to change it as a force for good, but also as an early warning mechanism. Because if there are things happening in the community, people can report confidently to the police, knowing that there won't be any reprisals, anonymity is preserved, and that solutions will be found to the problem. With regards to the issue on Russia, the world has seen how devastating this impact has been, not only on the Ukrainian people, but also on the African continent and elsewhere. Many people are feeling the ripples of the shake in what somebody will call it the butterfly effect. The butterfly just flaps its wings differently and the whole world rumbles. And in terms of what had gone on, the first major response was around the treatment of Africans who are leaving Ukraine for safety, particularly young Africans who are students in that country. The other has also been in terms of ensuring that those who are involved in supporting parties in this conflict respect the rights of the people that live in those communities. Sadly, we are facing a situation that will require international solidarity and courage, and Africa also has a role to play, and perhaps this is an opportunity for Africa to also show to the world that with all our experiences in tackling insecurity in our region, we can do so much better in offering expertise in terms of conflict reconciliation, transitional justice, as we have seen in Sierra Leone and Liberia, and ongoing projects with regards to the advancement of a lot of the international treaties and protocols that we have in the ECOWAS region. I thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, and honorable members. Thank you very much. Are you?
Thank you, Madam. The next partners, I'd like to ask you to not repeat all that has already been said.
Madam Speaker and honorable members of the Parliament, I can start by thanking you for your attention. The questions that were raised tells me that everybody paid rapt attention. So let me start by addressing the question of right to development vis-a-vis human rights and democracy. I want to say that you cannot isolate human development from development. I think the most important measurement for development is the Human Development Index. And this you cannot achieve in isolation with human rights and democracy. So, for me, I believe that human rights, democracy and human rights are the foundational, the foundation of the excuse that they are trying to preserve development, and that is why they are engaged in human rights violations. There's no excuse for that. There's also the question of human rights and governance reports being in partnership with national bar associations to be presented to the ECOWAS Parliament on an annual basis. West African Bar Association is willing to do that with, in partnership with Amnesty International. And we're very happy to work with the Parliament to do this. There's also the issue of there's this issue that a well-functioning state is best for human rights, but sometimes a state is compelled to use force to stop armed rebellion. That, my colleague has really delved very deeply into that. I can only say that we should observe rules of engagement in accordance with laws, national laws and international laws. And in doing so, we must ensure that due process is followed. So there was a question about what is opening West Africa up to criminal activities. I think the answer is very glaring. Bad governance is the key issue here. It's at the center, and the offshoots.
Madame, s'il vous plaît, un instant.
Madam, please, hold on, please. We don't have Portuguese interpretation. Hold on, please, madam.
Chers interprètes.
Dear interpreters.
So the question of what is opening us up to criminal activities. We know that bad governance is at the center. The other manifestations are the offshoots. Governance is not transparent. Corruption is so deeply permeated in the governance sector. Poverty is the evidence. The type of politics we play in our region is very sectional. They employ ethnic gimmicks, religious manipulations, name it. They just pitch the citizens against each other. They instigate hate, and they think that by the time they ascend the throne of power, they are immune to the outcome. But it's glaring, glaring that this is not so. As it is, especially back home in Nigeria right now, where kidnapping is like the order of the day, I'm sure that even our public office holders are facing this menace, either directly or their relatives being affected, etc., etc. So it tells us that corruption should not be the way to go. Bad governance must be eradicated. Everybody must put hands on deck if we must make progress in resolving the numerous conflicts in the West African region. So on the question of imposition of constitutions, solutions, what are the solutions? WABA will not have all the solutions. Even ECOWAS does not have all the solutions. It's a work in progress. But it's very important that we point these things out, because identification of these problems is a problem identified is almost a problem solved. So this guides us in step-to-step roadmaps and actions that can be taken in order to ensure that this stops. A typical example is the maximization of the ECOWAS protocol on democracy and good governance. There's so many, most of the provisions are very fantastic, especially when it comes to acceptable way of constitutional amendments, etc., etc. I think what we should basically be doing right now is engaging on lots of advocacies around popularizing this. A lot of people are not aware of the provisions. We popularize it and we ensure that the departments involved in states function in accordance with the provisions of that document. And the states that have not ratified, the ones that have not domesticated, are enjoined to do that. This can only happen by advocacies, by the civil society, and by ECOWAS itself. How